You know how sometimes you're just going about your day and you see something simple, but it just clicks, and suddenly it completely changes how you see the future, like a single moment that unpacks an entire decade of change right in front of you. Well, that's exactly what sparked this whole explainer, and it all started on a random city street.
So, our story starts in Washington, D.C. You know, a city full of monuments, museums, a place where huge, history-shaping decisions get made. But, as it turns out, sometimes the biggest glimpse of the future isn't happening inside some government building. Nope, it's happening right there on the street.
And this is what sparked it all. It wasn't just any old truck. It was a Tesla semi, just humming quietly by, carrying a bunch of brand new cars. I mean, it's sleek, it's electric, and it's basically a rolling symbol of a huge economic shift that's already happening. So it just gets you thinking, right? How can this one truck, this single moment, tell us so much about where our economy, our jobs, and really our whole way of life are headed? And let me tell you, the answer is way more revolutionary than you might think. See, we're not just talking about a slightly better truck here. Not at all. We are talking about the very beginning of a complete logistics revolution, a total reinvention of how we move, well, everything, everywhere. Okay, so the real story here is the step-by-step progression. It all starts with electric trucks like the one we just saw, but the huge next step is full self-driving. Once that's solved, and it will be, you can have entire fleets of these trucks operating in perfect sync. They call it platooning, where they follow super close to each other to save a ton of energy. And that is what leads to the total revolution in logistics. Just think about what this number really means. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These autonomous fleets, they don't need to stop for sleep. They don't need breaks. They don't need shift changes. The flow of goods just becomes relentless, a constant, nonstop river of commerce flowing across the country. And that brings us to the most disruptive number of all, zero. That's right, zero. That's going to be the eventual cost of human labor for operating these trucks. And when you pull the single biggest operational expense right out of the equation, well, the entire economic model for shipping and logistics gets completely turned on its head. And really, that's the end game here. You're looking at a system that's so efficient, so cheap, and so fast that it's going to completely reshape everything. Not just your local package delivery, but global supply chains. The ripple effects from this are just going to be enormous. Okay, but with all that incredible efficiency comes a really big, really human dilemma. We have to stop and ask ourselves, what's the real cost of all this progress? And this is the thought that just pops into your head when you see that truck, right? For every single fleet of self-driving vehicles making our supply chains smoother, there are real people, people whose entire livelihoods depend on driving. You know, this isn't some distant, abstract problem. This is a very real concern for millions and millions of families. And we're not just talking about one group of people either. We're talking about long-haul truck drivers. We're talking about your local taxi drivers, all the Uber and rideshare drivers that we rely on every day, and countless delivery people. Just in the US, that's nearly 4 million professional driving jobs. I mean, this technological wave is set to disrupt an entire massive sector of the workforce. So when you're faced with a disruption this big, you have to wonder, is there a different way to think about it? And that brings us to a potential strategy for how to navigate this new automated economy. It's about a shift in mindset, really, from being a worker to being, well, something else. Here's the big question we all need to start thinking about. This revolution in logistics is going to create literally trillions of dollars in economic value, all through sheer efficiency. So the critical question becomes, who gets to share in that value? How do we make sure that the benefits of all this progress are actually shared by everyone? Well, one possible answer involves a tool you might have heard of, an ETF, or an exchange-traded fund. And all it is really is a super simple way to buy a whole basket of stocks all at once. The beauty of this approach is that it helps you diversify. So instead of trying to bet on which one company is going to win the automation race, you can own a tiny piece of lots of them, including the big tech giants that are building this future. This really lays out two very different paths forward, doesn't it? On one path, your job gets automated by a company. But on the other path, you own a piece of that very same company. So as its efficiency and its profits grow because of automation, so does the value of your little piece of the pie. So what this really is a huge philosophical shift. If the whole nature of work is changing, then maybe our relationship to the economy has to change too. The strategy is actually pretty simple, but it's really powerful. If you want to share in the benefits of economic progress, you have to become a part owner of the engines that are driving it. And that leaves us with one last really fascinating question to chew on. In a world where more and more tasks are getting automated, does our main economic role shift? Do we go from selling our labor to owning the capital? Owning the robots, the software, the systems that are doing the labor. It's a pretty profound thought, and kind of crazy that it was all sparked by just one truck quietly driving into the future.